My wife secretly married her boss for his $500, $0 inheritance while we were engaged, then stole my family's $200, $0 estate during the divorce. Now she's suing me for half of everything, claiming I'm the manipulative one. Hello everyone. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Now, let's begin the video. Using a throwaway for obvious reasons, with certain specifics modified to preserve anonymity. I never thought I'd be one of those guys who gets blindsided like this, but here I am. The craziest thing happened last month and I still can't wrap my head around it. It all started with little signs, things I brushed off at first, but looking back, they were screaming at me. My wife, Lisa, had been acting weird for a while. She'd be a little more distant, secretive even. I'd catch her sneaking her phone around, deleting messages, and sometimes she'd get defensive when I asked about it. That should have been a red flag, but I thought maybe she was just stressed or had some work drama. Then there were the little things that didn't add up. She'd go out with friends more often, but I'd notice her phone ringing at odd hours and she'd hurry to hide it. One night, I decided to check her phone after she fell asleep. I know, that's invasive, but I was desperate for answers. I unlocked her phone and found a string of texts with her boss, Mark. They weren't just friendly, they were flirty, suggestive, talking about meeting up, planning dinners, and even explicit talk about sex. I was stunned. My heart started pounding and I felt this cold emptiness wash over me. I didn't want to believe it at first. Lisa always said she loved me, that I was her everything. But there it was, clear as day. I kept reading and I saw the messages got more intense over the past couple of months. They'd talk about secrets, not getting caught, and how Mark was planning to leave his wife for her. I was sick. I'd never suspected Lisa of cheating. She's always been bitchy and manipulative, but I thought she'd at least respect our marriage. Turns out she was planning a whole other life behind my back. I didn't confront her right away. I needed to process what I'd found. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and angry. How could she do this? To me, to our life. I've been working my ass off to build a future, and she was out there screwing her boss, planning to run off with his inheritance. That's when I started digging deeper. I found out that Mark was married too, but he's been cheating on his wife with Lisa for months. They even talked about how Mark was going to marry her after he got his inheritance. $500, zero from his dad, apparently. I couldn't believe it. That kind of money, why wouldn't she want a piece of it? The more I uncovered, the sicker I felt. I remembered how she used to complain about money, how broke we were sometimes, how she'd say she wanted a better life. Turns out she was planning to get her hands on Mark's inheritance, and she'd already married him secretly. I found out she'd forged documents, lied about her age, and even had a secret wedding in Vegas, all while we were still engaged. She was already married to her boss when she told me she loved me and wanted to marry me. I was floored, and then I discovered something worse. During the divorce process, she managed to steal a family estate worth around $200, $0. I never suspected her of being so calculating. She'd been planning this all along, using me to get what she wanted. Now she's suing me, claiming I manipulated her, trying to take half of everything. My house, my savings, my family's estate. I can't even begin to describe the rage I feel. It's like I've been played for a fool and now she's trying to spin it so she's the victim. I remember sitting there, holding her phone in my hand, realizing the truth. I felt like I'd been hit by a truck. My stomach was in knots, my mind racing. How did I miss all these signs? How did I not see that the woman I loved was capable of all this? I should have known she had a manipulative streak, but I was blinded by love. Now I'm left with nothing but betrayal and a mess I don't even know how to start cleaning up. After I uncovered everything, the first thing I did was confront Lisa. I couldn't hold it in anymore. I called her at work. She was bitchy. From the moment she answered, like she already knew what I was going to say. I told her I knew about her affair with Mark, about the fake wedding, the inheritance plans, everything. The silence on the line was deafening. Then she started with her usual lies. You're crazy, she said. You're just jealous because I'm successful and you're not. She tried to spin it like I was the manipulative one, that I was paranoid and insecure. Yeah, right. She had the nerve to call me controlling, said I was spying on her and invading her privacy. She even had the gall to cry and say I was ruining her career and her reputation, but I wasn't buying it. She kept insisting that Mark was just a friend, that I was overreacting, that I didn't understand her. She told me I was just insecure and that I should trust her. Trust her. After what I found, I wanted to scream. I told her I wanted her out of the house. She was furious, calling me possessive and jealous, but I didn't care. I told her to pack her bags and leave. I told her I was done with her lies, done with her manipulations. That night she stormed out, leaving her phone behind. I sat there, staring at the message threads, feeling like my world was crumbling. I kept thinking about how she'd lied to me every day, how she'd been planning this behind my back while pretending to be the loving wife. I was numb, but also furious. The next few days were a blur. I contacted a lawyer, started gathering evidence of her cheating, her forged documents, and her secret marriage. I wanted to fight her in court, not just over the divorce but also about the estate she stole from my family. I knew I had to be strategic. Lisa was bitchy and manipulative, and I knew she'd try to spin everything in her favor. She'd claim I was jealous, that I was controlling, that I drove her to cheat. That's her favorite line, blame everyone else for her own actions. But I had proof, screenshots, bank statements, witnesses. I also learned that Mark was planning to divorce his wife too. They were both in it for the money. I found out Mark's wife was suspicious, had even hired a private investigator. Turns out she's already filed for divorce and is suing him for adultery. I felt a strange sense of relief knowing I wasn't the only victim here. Lisa had been lying to me from the start, and Mark was just as guilty. They were a perfect pair of scheming cheaters. Meanwhile, Lisa's bitchy attitude didn't change. She kept trying to call me, text me, even show up at my office, demanding I take her back. She'd lie about everything, say she never loved Mark, that her marriage to him was just a mistake, that she only married him for money. But I knew better. I saw her messages. I saw her plan to take half of my assets and the estate. She still insisted she was the victim, that I had manipulated her into thinking she loved me. I had to laugh at that. Manipulate her. She's the manipulator, the liar, the con artist. I was just the guy who trusted her. I started to feel a strange mixture of relief and anger. Relief because I finally knew the truth, and anger because I wasted so much time believing she was the woman I married. I thought about all the moments we shared, vacations, holidays, quiet nights, and how she'd been betraying me the entire time. It's like waking up from a nightmare, but the nightmare is real. I can't say I feel hopeful about the future, but I know I have to keep fighting. I have to protect what's mine, not just for me, but for my family's legacy. In the end, I realized that the betrayal wasn't just about the affair or the money. It was about trust. Lisa had completely destroyed that. And now, I have to figure out how to rebuild my life from the ashes of her lies. After I got over the initial shock and confrontation, I knew I had to act fast. Lisa wasn't going to go quietly, and I couldn't let her get away with all the lies and theft. I hired a lawyer who specialized in divorce and asset recovery. The first thing I did was gather every piece of evidence I could find: texts, emails, bank statements, even her forged documents, everything that proved her schemes. I also contacted the estate lawyer who handled my family's assets to make sure they were protected. The more I dug, the more I realized how deep her deception went. She had managed to forge signatures on some documents, transfer funds from our joint accounts, and even secretly married Mark in a quick Vegas ceremony. I found out she'd been planning to run off with Mark's inheritance, literally lying to me about her plans to buy a house, start a family, all while secretly married to another man. It was like a bad soap opera, only it was real. I felt like a damn fool for not seeing it sooner. One of the most shocking things was discovering that Lisa had contacted her boss's wife, Mark's wife, before I even knew about the marriage. The wife had hired a private investigator, and she had proof of the affair. She confronted Mark and Lisa with everything, and Mark's wife told me she was planning to fight for her share of Mark's inheritance too. That was a small silver lining. I wasn't the only victim in this mess. I felt a little less crazy knowing I wasn't alone in this nightmare. Meanwhile, Lisa was still trying to spin her story. She told my lawyer I was abusive, manipulative, and controlling, her usual lies. She claimed I'd driven her to cheat to marry Mark to steal the inheritance. She even said I was trying to ruin her reputation. I couldn't believe the audacity. I had all the receipts, all the proof, and she was out there trying to paint herself as the victim. I knew she'd do anything to get her way. I kept my cool during the meetings, but inside I was boiling with rage. The divorce proceedings started moving fast. I filed for full custody of our assets and to block her from gaining any more money or property. I also filed a counterclaim to recover the estate she stole from my family. My lawyer told me I had a strong case, especially with the evidence I gathered, but I knew Lisa wouldn't give up easily. She'd fight dirty, she always did. That bitch was used to twisting facts and lying her way out of trouble. I had to be prepared for a long war. In the meantime, I stayed quiet about everything to my friends and family. I didn't want to give Lisa any ammunition or make her think she was winning. I just kept collecting evidence, staying calm, and planning my next move. The hardest part was dealing with the emotional toll, feeling stupid for trusting her, angry at her, betrayal, and scared about what the future held. I'd always believed in honesty and loyalty, and now I was left with nothing but a toxic trail of lies. One night I found myself staring at her old photos, our wedding pictures, vacations, happy times, and I felt this deep ache in my chest. How did I get here? How did I miss all the signs? I kept replaying every conversation, every moment I thought was real love, and I realized I'd been completely blind. She was good at hiding her true self, and I let her get away with too much for too long. But I wasn't going to let her walk away with everything. I owed it to myself and to my family to fight back. Now I'm just waiting for the court dates, trying to stay strong and figuring out how to rebuild. I know I'll never fully trust again, but I also know I won't let her destroy me. I've got a long road ahead, but I refuse to let her win. I learned the hard way that sometimes the people closest to you can be the biggest liars. And when you find out the truth, you better hold onto your assets and your sanity. The days that followed were some of the most stressful I've ever experienced. Every morning I woke up feeling like I'd been hit by a truck, knowing I had to face the reality of what Lisa had done and what was coming next. My lawyer kept pushing me to stay calm and focus on gathering more evidence, but it was hard. Every time I saw her name pop up on my phone, my stomach clenched. She kept trying to call, to text, to plead her case, or so she said. But I knew better. She was just trying to manipulate me again. One day she showed up at my office. I wasn't expecting her, and honestly, I was furious. She had this bitchy grin on her face, acting like she was innocent. She told me she was sorry, that she made mistakes, and that she wanted to work things out. She said she loved me and that she didn't mean to hurt me. She even started crying, trying to look vulnerable, but I just stared at her. I knew her game. She was trying to guilt-trip me into dropping the case. I told her to leave, that I wasn't falling for it. That night I sat in my apartment, staring at the stack of court papers and evidence I'd collected. I thought about everything, how she'd lied, cheated, stolen from my family, and now she was trying to manipulate her way back into my life. Honestly, I felt exhausted. Part of me wanted to just give up, but I knew I couldn't. I had to see this through, not just for my sake, but for the sake of my family's estate and reputation. In the meantime, I learned that Mark was already divorced from his wife and had moved into a new house, probably with Lisa. I found out she'd been living with him for weeks, hiding it from everyone. I also discovered she'd been secretly trying to sell off some of our joint assets, our house, a car, even some jewelry, trying to cash out before the court could intervene. She'd been planning her escape, and I was just a pawn in her game. It made me sick to think about her lying in bed with him, planning her future while I was left to pick up the pieces. I decided to hire a private investigator to watch her. I needed proof of her whereabouts, her new life with Mark, and any other illegal moves she might be making. The PI confirmed she'd been going out with Mark's friends, visiting fancy restaurants, and even sneaking around at night. It was clear she was determined to start her new life, no matter the cost. I couldn't believe how cold and calculating she'd become. She'd always been bitchy and manipulative, but this was next level. She was willing to burn everything down just to get her hands on that inheritance. As I watched her move through her new life, I felt a strange mixture of rage and sadness. Rage at her betrayal, and sadness because I still remembered the woman I fell in love with before all the lies and schemes. I kept asking myself how I missed all the signs. How did she manage to hide her true self for so long? I thought about the vows we took, the promises, the future we planned. All gone. She turned into someone I didn't even recognize anymore, someone who lied about her feelings, her intentions, her entire life. The court date was set for next month. I was nervous but also determined. I knew I had the evidence to prove her theft, her lies about the marriage, and her plans to take half of everything. I knew she'd do everything in her power to spin the story her way, but I also knew I had the truth on my side. I kept telling myself I had to stay strong, that this wasn't just about money, it was about justice. Justice for the betrayal, justice for the lies, and justice for the damage she'd done to my life. I also started talking to some close friends and family, trying to keep my head clear. They couldn't believe what I'd uncovered, and some of them told me I should just walk away and forget her. But I couldn't. Not yet. I felt like I owed it to myself to see this through to the end. I also knew I had to be prepared for her to try to take me to court for custody of some assets, her way of trying to get the last word in. I was ready for that fight too. Now I just focus on staying calm, staying organized, and waiting for the next chapter to unfold. I know Lisa is going to go down without a fight, and she's already proven she's capable of lying and scheming her way out of anything. But I refuse to let her win. I've learned that sometimes the truth is the only thing that can set you free, even if it's ugly and painful. I just hope I come out of this stronger. The court date finally arrived, and I was a nervous wreck. I knew she'd do everything she could to spin her story, paint herself as the victim, accuse me of manipulating her, and deny any involvement in the theft or the marriage. I had all my evidence organized, the texts, the forged documents, the bank transfers, everything. I sat there in the courtroom, feeling like I was on trial myself. Lisa was sitting across from me, her bitchy smirk almost daring me to say something. She looked confident, like she already knew she had this in the bag. The judge called the case, and my lawyer started presenting the evidence. I watched her face closely. She tried to look innocent, but I could see the flicker of panic in her eyes when the documents were laid out. The texts with Mark, the forged signatures, the proof of her secret marriage, everything was there. I could see her trying to come up with excuses, but the facts were undeniable. Then Lisa got up to speak. She started with her usual manipulative tone, claiming I was abusive, controlling, and jealous, trying to paint me as the bad guy. She threw in some tears, saying I drove her to cheat and that she only married Mark because I pushed her away. She insisted she never stole anything, that she was just trying to find her happiness. The audacity. I felt my blood boil. I knew she was lying, and I knew the judge saw right through her bullshit. My turn. I stood up, looked her dead in the eyes, and laid out everything. How she'd lied about her feelings, how she'd forged documents, manipulated her way into Mark's inheritance, and stolen from my family. I explained how her actions had destroyed our marriage and betrayed everything I believed in. I could see her trying to interrupt, but the judge silenced her. I finished with a firm statement that I was seeking full custody of all assets, that her actions warranted criminal investigation, and that I wanted justice for the damage she caused. The judge took a long pause, then delivered her verdict. She awarded me full custody of the estate and ordered Lisa to pay back the stolen funds. She also declared the marriage invalid due to the forged documents and fraud. Lisa's face turned pale. She tried to argue, but the judge wasn't having it. The court's decision was clear. Lisa was a liar, a manipulator, and a thief. She was ordered to leave the house immediately and to cease any further attempts to claim assets she had no legal right to. After the court session, I felt a strange mixture of relief and exhaustion. It was over, at least for now. I had won the legal battle, but the emotional scars still lingered. I knew Lisa would try to fight back. She was bitchy and vindictive, after all. She started threatening me afterward, claiming she'd appeal, that she'd sue me for defamation, and that she'd make my life hell. But I was prepared. I had the evidence and I knew I could stand my ground. That night I sat alone in my apartment staring at the court papers. I finally allowed myself to breathe. I realized how much I'd been through, how betrayed I felt, how angry I was, but also how determined I'd become. I understood that I'd been naive for so long, trusting someone who was never who I thought she was. And I learned that sometimes justice takes time and fighting for what's right is worth every sleepless night. Now I'm in a phase of rebuilding. I've started therapy, trying to process everything, and I've begun the slow process of trusting again. I know I can't erase what happened, but I can choose how I move forward. I'm not sure what the future holds, but I know I won't let her or anyone else manipulate me again. I've learned that honesty and integrity matter more than any inheritance or material wealth. And I hope this serves as a warning to anyone out there. Trust your gut, watch the signs, and don't let anyone take you for a ride. Because in the end, the truth always comes out, and justice is worth fighting for. After everything was settled legally, I thought I'd finally get some peace, some quiet to process what had happened and start healing. But that's not how life works, especially when betrayal runs this deep. Lisa, of course, didn't take the court's ruling lightly. She went into full bitchy revenge mode, trying to smear my name everywhere she could. She called my boss, spread rumors about me being controlling and abusive, and even tried to turn some of our mutual friends against me. It was like watching a snake strike after it's been cornered. Honestly, I expected her to be spiteful, but it still stung. I never wanted to be that guy who fights dirty or stoops to her level, but I also knew I couldn't let her win. I kept my head down, stayed focused on rebuilding my life, and refused to be dragged into her chaos. I cut ties with most of the gossipers and kept my distance from anyone who might be swayed by her lies. I knew her game. She's bitchy, manipulative, and relentless. But I also knew I had the truth on my side, and that's what mattered. Over time, I started investing in myself, therapy, new hobbies, working on my career. I realized I had been so caught up in her schemes that I'd lost sight of who I was. The betrayal had shattered my trust, but it also made me reevaluate what really matters. I learned that money, power, and inheritance are meaningless if you're living a lie. What matters is integrity, honesty, and having the strength to walk away from someone who's toxic. Looking back, I see how naive I was to trust her at all. She was bitchy, yes, manipulative, absolutely, but I ignored all the warning signs because I wanted to believe in love. Now I see that sometimes the biggest betrayal comes from the person you least expect, someone you thought loved you, someone who pretended to be your partner while secretly planning her escape. The most valuable lesson I've learned is to trust yourself first. Don't ignore the red flags. And if someone is lying, cheating, stealing from you, get out before they drag you down with them. Because in the end, honesty is everything. And even if it hurts like hell to find out the truth, it's better than living in a lie. I'm not perfect now and I still have scars, but I'm moving forward. I know I'll never forget what happened, but I refuse to let it define me. I've learned that sometimes the only way to win is to walk away and rebuild from the ground up. That's what I plan to do. And I hope anyone reading this who's going through something similar learns that even in betrayal, there's a chance to start over stronger, wiser, and more cautious. Because trust me, when someone shows you who they really are, believe them the first time.